The way that I always think about these private company valuations is you always want to think about them as a discount on the future versus a premium on the past. This thing I learned from Peter Thiel, who I worked with for many years. And the best companies have very bright futures. So as you think about something like Lyft, for example, only half of the rides in the US, 0.5% of the rides in the US today are shared rides. The entire remainder of rides in the US are normal rides. So there's a lot of room for a company like Lyft in the US alone to grow just by capturing, if they could even capture 2% of rides in the US, that's tremendous room to grow, you know. So I think there's a pretty bright future for the good tech companies, and quite honestly, there are some dogs that are going to go out this year and they're not going to do well. But ultimately, the great thing about technology is the macro tends to matter less in the long term for the really enduring tech companies.
How do you distinguish the dogs? Because that's what people are trying to figure out right now.
Oh, well, it's really hard. So, you know, it's really hard. You have to come at it from all of these different angles. Ultimately, you want to find these businesses that have these really durable revenue models that are going to be able to grow for many years going forward. And it's a hard thing to figure out.
I know it's not your business. It's a business Peter Thiel's on the board of, but I was going to say Facebook had looked like a very durable business. It may actually ultimately still be a very durable business itself, but you look in the public markets, the way that company is being treated and the way a lot of social media companies are being treated. How do you look at that whole space?
You know, I think the social media space is pretty ripe for disruption. There's always this trade-off between privacy and communications, and so we want as users to be able, consumers to be able to communicate with our friends, be connected. We also want our privacy, and then there's this question of does the privacy thing ever get shifted too far to a point where people revolt? But thus far, you haven't seen any sort of mass user revolt. A lot of the noise has been in the markets with regulators, but the users are still using the product.
Okay? Today, if I came to you with a brilliant idea that relates to social media, though, but maybe I need to share your information with, I mean, will you not even go near it? Do you want to be in that space?
I actually think it's a narrative violation to be doing things in social media today as a startup. And what we're focused on at Bedrock is investing in these companies that are counter-narrative. And so I think the idea of investing in a social media business today, early stage as a venture capitalist, very unfashionable. So it's something that we'd be very up for and have been looking at some new companies in that sector.
We were talking in the last hour about blockchain. That was always the sort of watchword, catchword of the last 2 years. Is that is that a myth or reality? Do you think that's overhyped, underhyped? Where is that?
Well, you got to distinguish between blockchain, the technology, and then the currencies themselves. And so I would say that blockchain, the technology, continues to be somewhat overhyped. There's just, it's just lots of scalability challenges to be figured out there. And then on the currency side, I would say at this time last year, extraordinarily overhyped. So I remember around this time last year, I had an electrician in my house. He was telling me about how I'd become a Bitcoin millionaire. Bitcoin was around $20 million, or $20,000, pardon me. He was a Bitcoin multimillionaire. And at this point, I think Bitcoin's probably relatively underhyped. I mean, if you think a year ago versus today, I personally have less confidence in global governments, less confidence that we're going to be in a stable, long-term global future. And if you're not very confident in global stability, you should be long Bitcoin.
Can we talk about pot? So Joe Rogan got Elon Musk to smoke pot on his set. Would you smoke some pot on our set? I don't know. It's
not legal in New York State.
But you are investing in it.
Well, one of the reasons I invested in Tilray back in the Privateer Holdings, the creators of Tilray back in 2014, was that I didn't think the founders actually used the product. So I spent a lot of time trying to diligence whether I thought the team was actually using it, and they weren't. And the reason I cared is not because I have anything societally against it, but it was illegal at the time. It wasn't legal. The company was based at the time in Washington State, was not legal in Washington State. At this point, I do think the trend has really dramatically shifted from back when we invested in Tilray in 2014. It's now obviously a publicly traded company.
Huge win for you.
Big win. We're really lucky to have been able to back those founders early on. But there are only a few countries in the world where there was a medically legal framework. Now there are over 30 countries. I say in a few years it'll be 60.
Was that part of the thesis at the time, that you knew that it was going to be this big? Or
Well, we didn't know the IPO was going to be successful as it was. That was a pleasant surprise. I would say that we did believe that that regulation ultimately follows what society wants, and we felt back in 2014 when we made the investment that most people in most countries believed it should at least be medically legal, and the regulations were
Does
very
recreational matter, though? Because what societies want changes. It waxes and wanes with situations. Does it matter if it's recreationally legal?
I think that there's big business to be built just on the medical side, and then I do strongly believe the trend is toward recreational legalization. Certainly in many of the Western European countries, South America, I think quite honestly the U.S. is behind other countries on that score, so TBD here, but around the world the trend is very much toward recreational legalization.
Okay, give us the big idea for 2019. Is there anything like that where you said to yourself, okay, there's either a regulation or a trend in society that's moving in a direction that I'm seeing and I'm not sure everybody else is seeing right now?
Well, I'm personally very interested in new approaches to financing education and new approaches to actually getting an education. I really do think the university, the college system is very broken, and there are new financial instruments out there that can really help folks with their education. So we have some exciting stuff that we've been working on that we'll be talking about in 2019. Beyond that, I'd say the trend for 2019 is the end of trends. I think we've gone through so many hype cycles in technology, and I really think we're in an environment where you just have to find one-of-a-kind things that don't fit into any easy-to-categorize categories, and I think that makes the job of being an investor a lot harder.